You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us.
Hi, I'm Annie from the US.
And I'm Johanna from Austria, and you're listening to your favorite international podcast. Sorry for not being here last week.
It's not your fault. We are both living in construction zones at the moment, and I did not realize they were tearing up the street directly in front of our house. There is probably a memo from the town in that giant pile of mail I've been avoiding for the summer. It's fine. It's fine.
I mean, it's been 4 years or something like going on to 4 years in your street.
It's crazy. Yeah. The dog, though, is really good about not reacting to like loud booms and construction equipment because he's never known. He's 3.5 and has never known any different.
Poor baby.
I know. He's such a good boy.
Yeah, so we really waited for as long as we could to record, but at some point we just had to call it quits. And Annie, Annie was so kind to record the episode alone because, I think that's better than no episode at all.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's a time difference of 6 hours, so...
Yeah. At some point, it's like, because she still has to edit all of this. So it's like, just go to bed now, and then you can get up early and cut all the things. But I used to not think that way. I used to rather skip an episode than do one solo. But I'm a big girl, and I can do it without you. I just prefer not to.
Also, there's always going to be days like this. We are just the two of us doing all of it by ourselves.
That's
and we love to do it, don't get me wrong. So that's what keeps us going. And of course, all of you out there listening and your downloads and your reviews and all of our subscribers on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. All of your messages and all of your Patreon support. Thank you so much for all of it. And if you want to hear more about ways to support this podcast, please wait until the end of the episode. That's when we'll tell you all the important information. Because now it's time for our last episode of October. We made it. You made it. We're done. We're done.
Maybe the penultimate.
Actually, no, I just lied. There will be one more.
It could be the penultimate. We'll see.
You know what that means. Our beloved tradition, the annual Halloween Listener Stories episode.
We have so many this year, so many good ones, yeah.
We got so many that we couldn't even use all of them. We're really sorry.
We really did. We have a whole other folder now for our next, but keep them coming. Like, when we get enough to do a whole second episode, we can just do another episode of listener stories. It doesn't have to be Halloween-based. We can save the really scary ones for Halloween, and I know some of you have funny stories, too.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone who wrote. All the stories were really, really good. It was so hard to choose.
It was really hard to choose. All right, so let's get started with this incredibly creepy story from Pearl, who writes, quote, I absolutely love the podcast, and I hope you're having fun reading everyone's spoopy stories. Boo. Boo back to you, too. So this one is really weird, and it was experienced by multiple people. I was dating a guy when I was 20. He was Matthew, 24, and he lived with 2 other lads, Philip and Simon, the same age, in an old terraced house in northern England. There were some general weird things that happened when I was there. For example, there were times when I thought I'd see someone passing by me going into another room, only to check and see no one there. I didn't mention it because I wrote it off as just catching something out of the corner of my eye and my brain connecting dots that weren't there. There were also several instances of their house cat, Jeannie, coming into the sitting room, freezing, arching her back and hissing at something in the corner, and darting back out again. But I wrote it off as cats being cats. One day, Philip stormed into the sitting room where Matthew, Simon, and I were all sitting. He was annoyed and wanted to know why Simon had been calling him incessantly. And the 3 of us in the room baffled as to what the hell he was talking about, as we'd all been in the sitting room chatting. This happened several times, never the same person supposedly doing the calling, and always the calling was from different rooms. I had that same thing in my old apartment, and it was the fucking worst. because it sounds exactly like the person who's calling you. Oh, I got the chills now. She continues. They wrote it off as the lads messing with each other and winding each other up after a creepy experience where we had all been present. One night, I was staying over and woke suddenly in the middle of the night when Matthew had thrown on the bedroom lights and was standing in the middle of the room. I do not take well to being woken. I love my sleep. So I said something like, "What the fuck are you doing?" He replied that he thought he'd heard a noise, but it was okay. I was too sleepy to deal with it and just fell back to sleep. I asked him about it the next day, but he just said he thought he'd heard a noise. I asked Simon if he had heard anything, but he said no, so I forgot about it. A few weeks later, I was staying over again. I woke up in the middle of the night, which was really odd for me. I didn't think much of it, went to get back to sleep, and saw Matthew's arm was over me, so I decided to give him a cuddle. My arm went through his arm and hit the covers. The arm then started to draw back to the edge of the bed, and I realized the arm was unnaturally long and was attached to a grayish figure that was crouched at the side of the bed. I was absolutely paralyzed. The figure then started to grow in height until it almost reached the ceiling. With tremendous effort, I managed to shout out and move again and scared the shit out of Matthew, who thankfully threw the lamp on. The figure evaporated. I was panicking and shaky and said I had a nightmare. Matthew was worried and, bless him, let me sleep with the lamp on. The next day, I decided to tell him about the nightmare and what I'd actually seen. He then told me the incident a few weeks previously where he had woken me in the night was actually the exact same thing happening to him. Philip came in while we were talking about it, and it turned out he too had a similar experience in his room. When Simon came home, we carried on talking, and it turned out we had all experienced the figure at the edge of the bed, seeing people entering the rooms when no one was there. I point blank refused to stay in that house again after that, and I think the lads didn't last that much longer. We're all still pretty friendly, and every now and again we talk about that creepy house. All four of us consider ourselves skeptics, and we've been trying to figure out if there was something weird, or if we all had the same sleep paralysis dream, which would be weird enough, or if we had just creeped each other out with our own scary stories. Thanks again for being such an awesome podcast. Well, thank you for being such an awesome listener, and for that absolutely terrifying start. How scary is that?
It's so scary. You know that I suffer from sleep paralysis. I've talked a lot of times about it. I would say it was sleep paralysis, but it doesn't match because she could actually move in the beginning.
Yeah.
And when you have sleep paralysis, it's not like you're dreaming and can move around and then, you know what I mean? It's like you're frozen from the beginning when it happens.
That's right.
And also that all four of them have the exact same thing. It's super creepy because I don't think that was sleep paralysis.
I don't either. Honestly, that sounds more like aliens to me.
Ugh.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
So, the next story is from someone I know who prefers to remain anonymous. But I can tell you that this person is very no-nonsense, which makes the story even scarier.
Definitely.
Hello. I would like to share my Halloween story, and no, I'm not making this up. I lived in sunny Mexico for almost 15 years and worked for many years in a rather famous resort in the Riviera Maya between Cancun and Tulum. Throughout my years working at the resort, I kept on hearing various stories of aluches, a mythical spirit or creature that is usually invisible, but other people state they have seen them. Aluches are rather famous or infamous in the Mayan world. When I first started working at the resort, it had just opened and grew over the years. During construction, there were many accidents, and people kept on telling our hotel director, a no-nonsense professional, that the aluches were not happy because they were not asked for permission to build a resort on their land. The jungle land belonged to them. The hotel director was laughing this off until one day, part of a building collapsed, causing deaths of workers, and the director caved in, asking a shaman for help. A small 3-story pyramid, similar to the castle pyramid in Chichen Itza, but in miniature. but in miniature, about 5 times 5 meters tall, was built, and regular so-called ofrendas, gifts to the Alushas, were placed there, and miraculously the accident stopped. This is part 1, but part 2 I witnessed myself. We had just built another building in the jungle, a little further off from the other building, which was supposed to be an economy-type accommodation. Once the building was finished and ready to be inaugurated, the hotel manager asked me if I wanted to see the new hotel, and I agreed. We drove with a golf cart through the jungle, arrived on site, and I found a lovely new building. The reception was quite impressive. The building had glass walls with amazing views over the lush jungle surrounding the new site. The manager and I were 100% alone on site, and as we were standing in front of the empty reception, we heard someone with presumably a wooden stick knocking on the huge glass walls, going all around the building. Our gaze immediately followed the sound, knock by knock, but there was no one, not a soul. Moments later, a fire alarm sounded in various rooms. To this day, I get goosebumps thinking about this day. I asked the manager to immediately drive back to the neighboring resort and never went back to the newly built part. Do I believe in Alushas now? Abso-fucking-lutely. Yeah, I can tell you, when I was living in Mexico, I heard, first of all, they have a very rich culture and very rich story repertoire of these kind of things happening, and very cryptids and entities, but also they have the most scary stories of hauntings. Like, my friends could tell stories. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure if I had ever heard of the Alushas before this, but I believe it. I definitely also believe in sort of forest spirits. I'm very much open to all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a really good one. All right. Our next story is from Jennifer. I keep thinking about that knocking sound all alone in the jungle.
That must have been so scary.
Super creepy. Oh, it's like something out of a Michael Crichton novel.
And if you can see that there's nobody.
No. Yeah, I don't like that at all.
I had that knocking sound and it turned out to be Leela. So maybe.
That's true. Maybe it was just like an itchy, small monkey. I don't know. Okay. Our next story is from Jennifer, who writes, "Hi, Annie and Johanna. I'm Jennifer, and I live south of Edinburgh, Scotland, but I'm originally from Boston's North Shore. Jennifer, my new best friend. I have 2 spooky stories for hopeful inclusion to the Halloween episode. Story 1. An uncle, William, I was especially close to, died when I was 14 on, ironically, Halloween." You write ironically, but I think you meant iconically, because, come on, is that not the best? William wasn't an uncle by blood or marriage, but that never mattered to me. I get it. He was so caring and an invaluable friend to my parents, and I absolutely adored him, so his death was a horrible blow. The details of his passing were kept tightly under wraps, as was his funeral, and so it wrought havoc on me, particularly as it was rumored to have been a suicide. All I knew was that it was sudden, and he'd been alone in his hotel room in New York, where he traveled for business. 10 years went by, and that October I was working at a tourist spot in Salem, Massachusetts. And there I met a coworker, Patty, who happened to mention in the break room that she was a medium. With my uncle's anniversary quickly approaching, he was often on my mind, and all I wished was for closure, or something close to it. So one day I sought out Patty and asked if she'd be willing to offer her services, that I needed closure on how a family member had passed. She said yes, and we continued with our work. Because of different shifts and the hectic environment that is Salem in October, I didn't see Patty for at least a week or 2 on Halloween. The moment I saw her, she rushed over to me. She told me the minute I left her last time, after my request, William visited her, showing her a hotel room with the window showing her the skyline of New York, and a bedside table with pills. He explained it had been an accident. He hadn't meant to die, and she could feel his sorrow over it. I was shaken by the details she offered and thanked her. As I turned to leave, she stopped me. She said she thought he'd been someone more my own age and had been surprised when he'd been an adult, and added that William closed the visit by saying that he loved me like a daughter. With that, I was given the closure I needed. Patty had unknowingly confirmed the few details I had and shared that I'd been as important to William as he continued to be for me. Oh. Story 2. I was living in Reading, Massachusetts, and one night I had a horrific nightmare in the early morning hours. Heart pounding, I was running through a wooded area chased by an unknown person. I was naked and barefoot, stumbling over branches, rocks, and vegetation, and extremely scared and cold. Falling, I was thrown to the ground face down, and soon after felt a knife pierce my back again and again. I literally woke up in a cold sweat and my heart was still pounding. Unable and unwilling to go back to sleep, I went downstairs and read and tried to figure out the nightmare. Later that morning, though, I saw on the news that a young woman had been murdered in Stoneham, a town next to Reading. She was found face down on the ground in a wooded area, naked and barefoot, and she'd been stabbed to death. Needless to say, I had trouble sleeping for a while afterward. I want to say how much I love your podcast, and especially how respectful you both are toward the victims and their families, and how you close each episode with asking for us to be kind to ourselves. It always gets me. Much love, Jennifer. P.S. My cats, Birdie, Oz, Link, and Pretty, send their purrs. Well, please give them all of the scritches because, wow, those are 2 really impressive stories. And if you have this medium's information, could you send it my way? That would be fascinating to me here in my neck of the woods. Wow.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your kind words. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And your creepy story.
Yeah. Our next email says, Hi. Oh, that's a really scary one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one is not. This one's, yeah.
My family and I live on a farm that was owned by a man named Gunter Hobbs, also known as Old Man Hobbs. He raised exotic birds. He kept a breeding pair in his house. Imagine giant macaw parrots on perches in a kitchen. When they laid eggs, Old Man Hobbs would hatch the eggs in a small cement block building located on the back of his property. Here he would hatch babies and then sell them. He had over 1,000 birds at one time. Unfortunately for Hobbs, his other business interests perhaps led to his demise. He was found deceased on the property by the hatching shed.
I don't know what that means. Did the birds get him? did the 1,000, was he just attacked by the birds? It's too many birds.
I also hope that the 1,000 birds didn't come from one pair of parrots.
Yeah, that would be very irresponsible. I'm sure they didn't. I'm not sure of anything, actually. It's fine.
When I relocated to Florida to be closer to my parents, I was in search of a farm. I needed a place that would be a home for my mother and my ailing father. The Birdman's property was for sale, and I convinced my mother that the home and farm would be perfect for what we needed. We moved in people, horses, dogs, and chickens. We were so happy, and all was fine. Just fine.
It's fine.
Everything is fine.
It's fine. Listen. I know it's called the Birdman's Farm, and the Birdman is almost never used to describe an upstanding citizen, but it's going to be fine. It's fine.
That's how all these kind of creepy movies start.
Yeah.
Happy people in a
it's
beautiful
fine.
place to live.
It was a bargain. But why?
It may seem strange to some people that we never saw the shed prior to buying the farm, but it was obscured from view because it was completely covered in vines. Along the west side of the shed were 3 dead orange trees in a triangular formation. I only went in once when my friends insisted on rummaging through someone's storage boxes. Amongst the dirt, there were dead rabbits, piles of what looked like mounds of old hay which must have been bedding for the nesting boxes. Maybe it was all just a collection of strange things from over the years. It was heart-thumping in my opinion. I never went back in. I shut the door and put a lock on it. I still call it the scary shed. One night, I was putting my horses in the back pasture. It was very large and grew mostly beautiful grass. What looked completely out of place amongst the beauty of the lush pasture was the scary shed and the 3 dead orange trees. Since the days are so hot here, I let my horses graze at night, which some may not understand except that horses have better sight than most animals at night. They have heightened awareness, and yes, I've known one to be able to get me home in the black of night. My lead horse, Tango, was the bravest boy by far. The ladies, Mishi and Ruby, always followed him. But that night he would not budge. He was doing things that horses do when they are scared. He wasn't moving, he was frozen. He began to blow through his nostrils. Ruby, who's built like a train, started stomping on the ground with her front hoof. This is an alarm horses use as a warning. Even after all this, I was annoyed and wanted to go drink a glass of wine with my mom, who had just put Dad to bed. It was relaxation time. I opened the gate and grabbed each horse and said, "Good night, weirdos." After all, a horsewoman can never admit to her horse that she's scared. But I got the hell back to the house. After grabbing my wine, I started over to my mom's side of the house, but noticed a mist in the air. This was a beautiful late fall evening in Florida, but somehow a little bit different. The mist was hanging in the air. There wasn't a front moving in. That's when I glanced to the back. And even though the dead trees were next to the shed, I could still see the block and green roof from where I stood. Still with this strange mist I've never seen since. That's when I saw the figure of a tall and lanky man. Big all over, white and black flannel shirt and big dungarees. He was standing in the trees? No, he was above the ground. So I thought, oh yes, great, so here we go. I'm sorry, is he floating? Okay, so back in the house I went. Of course, I took a swig of wine for courage. Also for courage, Wilbur the bodyguard. He's my dog. Best intimidator ever, rescued from a shelter in New York City. I looked at him, grabbed his collar and started walking, and as I walked, I talked to him. My instructions were simple. If you see something, just bark and let me know I'm not crazy.
I'm like, he's a New York dog. If you see something, say something.
Up the drive we went to the back, mist still hanging in the air like smoke. Wilbur stopped. Still, growled a low sound that turned into a howl. Just standing, howling at this floating mess next to the shed. I don't remember turning back, but I do remember recounting this to my mom. She was busy watching The Crown, and feeling very English that night, said, was it like a Casper type of ghost or something more like chains and moaning?
I love it. That's brilliant. Oh no, you saw a ghost? Tell me more. Asking the important questions.
The next morning I went to gather up the horses, feeling kind of silly for going on about strange things in the darkness. What I saw stopped me. Before me was Tango, who was waiting in front of the two mares, Mishi and Ruby. Which was mad because Ruby was always first at the gate. She was standing with her head low, and as I looked at her, there was blood everywhere on her body. A huge triangular piece of flesh had been ripped off of her side.
Oof.
It looked like a foot-long piece of pizza had been stuck on her. I grabbed her and tried to see if there was other damage, but that was the only spot. The other two were fine, but looked harried and exhausted. I cleaned her up and started looking for what could have caused that kind of damage. I've never had that kind of thing happen. The only out-of-place thing was a 12-foot-long vine that had become unwrapped from the dead orange tree. It was still attached to a very long limb that was now on the ground. To be certain, I had my friend come over to examine the clues, for an impartial look. She was stumped as to why my horse would become tangled in a singular vine if that is what happened, and then suffer a gash such as this. She did mention that she had noticed it looked like my neighbor next door had been burning his brush late at night. She said it gave off a haze that was directly over my farm all the way up to the road as she passed by the night before. I told her not to think I'm crazy and explained all the night's events. She had lived in our road for years and said to me when I was done, "Yes, Hobbs is seen every now and then because he could never keep his hands out of things." I'm a firm believer in seeing things and moving on, not to dwell too far in the past. Since that night of Hobbs, as I call it, things have changed. My father has passed away, just leaving memories, but sometimes I hear him laughing, which is fine with me. Since then, my old horse Tango was buried out back in the pasture. Ruby has since recovered, but once in a while will spook at things I can't see myself. I will spot the two mares standing still, with their heads in the air, sniffing and watching. My husband cut down the dead trees and moved the fencing so the scary shed is no longer in the pasture. I only see live rabbits running around, and maybe that's proof Hobbs has moved on. I know we have two. I never talk to my mom about ghosts anymore. I think she knows better than to poke fun. Thank you, ladies. I do have photos of Ruby's nasty gash and the scary shed. Love you both, Mia Butch.
Ooh, I want to see pictures of Ruby all recovered. I totally believe you about her getting hurt. How absolutely terrifying.
It's such a scary story, and it's again these kind of things where if I would have seen it in a movie 20 years ago, I would like, well, just leave this place. But now that we own a house, we know better than that. You just don't pack everything up and leave.
No, and you're not going to leave your animals.
No. Mm-mm.
All right.
Ugh, scary.
That's a good one. Yeah. All right. Here we go. The next one says, Johanna Annie. I thought I submitted this already, but I don't see it in my sent files. Apologies if this is a resubmission. Almost 11 years ago, my dad suffered a subdural hematoma and was in a medically induced coma due to brain seizures after a craniotomy. My sister-in-law, an RN, was in his room when suddenly he spoke and asked her what his father was doing there. My sister-in-law said that no one was there. My dad got mad and said, he's right there in the hallway. My dad never said anything after that and died later on November 30th. When I was updating our family tree to include his date of death, I saw that his mother also died on November 30th several years prior. I then noticed that my grandfather's birthday was November 30th. Coincidence, or did my dad actually see my grandfather that day in the hospital? Could he have been coming to bring his eldest child to his parents on that day? I think that's a good one, and I've seen this happen in person now too many times, to be honest. And I've spoken to too many hospice nurses, and you all know that I'm agnostic. I don't know what religion, if any, has it right. I don't know if there's a good place or a bad place or an in-between place, but I am absolutely, to my bones and soul, convinced that there is something after, and that our loved ones do visit us to prepare us for whatever there is on the other side. I've already told you the story of what happened when April passed away, and there's no explanation for that, right? Even if we were just hallucinating as our brain dies, that doesn't explain my experience, which was very, very tactile, you know? Yeah, it's like my mom, you know, before she died, was absolutely convinced that my aunt was with her. And we had to put the blanket on both of them. And my aunt, in her last days, saw her aunts and uncles. There's just nothing anybody could say or do to change my mind on that aspect, because I've just seen and experienced too much evidence, you know? Like, I don't have evidence of a lot of stuff, and so I'm just kind of open. But this one I'm pretty sure about.
Same. I'm absolutely convinced that loved ones come.
Yeah.
And guide us over. Really.
Right?
And if I'm wrong, if Annie is wrong, that's fine too, because we'll never know. But for now...
No, that's true.
It's what I believe in, and it's comforting.
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna let anyone ever take that away.
No, and you don't need to. And also, we're thinking of you, Hillary, because that's a terrible way to lose your dad, and I'm really sorry that you went through that. Hillary actually had 2 great stories, and this one is the other one. She writes, when my family and I moved 3,000 miles across the U.S., it was partly prompted because my husband's sister-in-law was terminally ill, and we wanted to be with her, his brother, and their family for support. Our oldest was also 12 at the time, and we knew if we were going to move, it had to be before the kids got any older, so they'd have an easier time adjusting. When we moved, we did not have any jobs waiting for us, so that was something that we had to figure out pretty quickly. Since my background was 25 years plus in banking, I ended up going to work for a bank in the town we all lived in. When I told my sister-in-law, she said she used to have a small safe deposit box at that office. Fast forward 6 months later, and my sister-in-law passed away with all of us and all of her 4 children and their families there with her to say our goodbyes. Several months later, I was cleaning out a file cabinet at work and pulled out a rubber-banded stack of closed safe deposit signature cards. As I was moving those, the rubber band snapped and the entire stack of cards went flying in all directions. I got on my hands and knees and started scooping them up into a pile. When I went to put a new band around the stack, my sister-in-law's card was right on top. Once she knew she did not have much time left, she told all of us that if there was a way to reach out from wherever she was going, she would. She and I had that conversation about her safe deposit box, so I will always believe she was responsible for the broken rubber band, and she was letting me know she was okay. Hillary H. Yeah, I think that's an absolutely amazing, amazing sign.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Wow.
Our next story is from Kelly, and she writes, Hi ladies. Last year I was listening to all the stories as I was on a walk while visiting my dad. At the time I didn't know it would be the last time I saw him, as he passed unexpectedly the day before Thanksgiving. So it is only fitting that I tell you how my dad had been in touch lately. At first, I would feel cold spots next to me, and this was odd, as I was sitting in a chair close to a wood stove that was going. I would think of how it could be a draft or some other reason, but never found a logical reason to have the cold spots. Another day, as I watched TV, it turned off on its own. Didn't think it was my dad until I went to bed shortly after, and the TV in my bedroom shut off. Neither TV had done that before or since. Your dad is a prankster.
I know, your dad's like, no, it's time for bed. Go to bed.
Dad things.
Yeah.
The latest thing my dad has done is to mess with the AC in my car. I was driving with my daughter one day and the air was off and it turned on in the back. We have a van that has a dual system. So I hit the off button and it switched to air being up on front, which it shouldn't have done. I got it turned off and about 30 seconds later it did it again. We went through this for a few minutes, both of us laughing the whole time until I said hi to my dad and then it stopped. I also do that. Whenever I think it's a sign, I always say hi, Dad. This same thing happened again a few weeks later, but it was a little different as the fan speed was going up and down. I was laughing and said to my mom that there seems to be a little ghost that likes to mess with my air. As soon as I said that, it turned on. I quietly said hi to Dad again and to please not mess up the car. The activity quickly stopped.
As if Dad ever would.
My stepmom says she experiences my dad around by smelling him every so often. Yeah, I get it. And if she has a problem with something, she will ask for help and later in the day she will find what she needs to fix the problem. I'm sure some would find ways to explain this all away, but I like to think he's still watching over us and saying hello. 100% he is.
Absolutely.
As much as I enjoy sending you notes of my experiences with loved ones that have passed, I really hope I don't send you one next year. Thank you for letting me share my stories again. Hope you all have a great day. Take care. Kelly.
Kelly.
I think it's so nice. Your reaction is one of joy and not of sadness, and I think that's wonderful.
I agree. That's what everyone strives for, right? That's where you want to get to. That's the goal. To remember with joy. That's the worst thing I can imagine, would be like if there is another side and you can like peek on people, like seeing people sad because of you, because you're not there anymore. Like that's my worst nightmare. Be happy. Just remember me every once in a while when you see a ridiculous hat. You know what I mean? All right. So, our next message is from my real life new friend Zola. Well, we haven't actually met, obviously. But Zola writes, "Hi, Annie and Johanna. Thank you for the best international podcast. Okay, here's my story. The backstory is my partner's mom was a teen mom, and he was raised by his grandparents. After his grandmother died, we invited Grandpa Bob to come and live with us, and we built a little bungalow grandpa unit in our garden for him to live in. I love that. He lived there for 5 years until he passed away. Now, during that 5 years, Grandpa Bob was a big part of our lives. We hung out daily, he knew all of our friends. Our friend Chris, who came over weekly, would often have a coffee with him, and even taught Grandpa Bob how to use an iPhone. After Grandpa Bob died, we invited Chris to move into the unit. The day after he moved in, he came in and said, quote, "It was really strange. I sat down in my chair and suddenly had this intense urge to go and buy a packet of Arnott's assorted cream cookies. It's so weird because I don't think I've eaten one of those since I was a kid." My partner and I just looked at each other and we were like, "What?" Those were Grandpa's favorite cookies. And he sat in his chair every day and ate them. To this day, we're all convinced that Grandpa temporarily possessed Chris so he could enjoy that last cookie. I love that so much. No further possessions or hauntings have occurred since. As if Grandpa would ever. Ugh. Thanks for the awesome podcast and happy Halloween. I hope if you ever get possessed that it's by friendly old Grandpa that just wants one last taste of his favorite cookies. P.S. I recently discovered that my internet friend, who I have never met in real life, is also a friend of Annie's. Hi, Taplin. Small world of internet friends. Say, love from Zola in Australia. So yes, this was actually the funniest coincidence that we had a 6 degrees of Fresh Hell podcast situation. I love it. I also I love that story. Zola, I love it so much. And I hope I pronounced the cookies right because I'm not sure about that.
Next up is a message by Roxana. It's the middle of the night, I'm wide awake, and I decided that I will share my spooky story with you guys for the Halloween episode. I can't wait for it, by the way. It's 2 short ones, but I'll make them as entertaining as possible. Thank you. Once I was alone in my previous apartment where I lived with my abusive ex-family. I was just sitting in my room and I heard a loud thud. I went out to investigate like every dead horror movie character. I saw the air freshener spray machine thingy laying on the floor. It was placed on a small nail, so okay, the motion of one of the neighbors, we lived in an apartment block, slamming their door could have caused it to fall. I was really spooked but tried to not make a big deal out of it. I put it back in its place and went back to doing my stuff. I forgot about the whole thing. Until the evening. Everyone was home already, and again I hear a thud. It was the same air freshener in a very similar position on the floor. I was now really spooked. I remember I just said, "Not again, oh no, please, not again," with tears in my eyes. My grandmother just shrugged and said Grandpa came for a visit.
Grandparents are like, listen, it's fine.
Now, for context, our neighbors slam their door all the time, but this never happened in this way before. My grandfather died in that apartment. When I was little, I could swear I heard objects move at night sometimes, but no one believed me. I grew up to be a giant, atheist, logic-headed skeptic. Until one night. Now it gets spookier and more fuckery, so hold on to your seats. I woke up around 4 a.m. by a thud and feeling of something almost hitting my head. I was rapidly pulled out of my sleepy haze because next to my head was laying a cross. It was a quite big metal cross my grandmother insisted on hanging in my room. It was above my bed on a hook facing upwards. Like the hook, it was crooked upwards and it was pretty long, so there was no way the cross could have just fallen off of it. Also, if the rope it was on, kinda like a necklace, broke, it would fall following the line of the wall, but it made a half-oval leap onto my pillow right next to my head. I was up immediately, lights on, tears in my eyes. Maybe that cross wouldn't have killed me, but it would have hurt. Well, it hurt my anxiety, so anyways, luckily for me, my father was getting ready for work, so I ran out to him, begging him to tell me he pranked me. He did not. And I didn't sleep more that night. It's worth mentioning nothing like this happened to me since I moved away from that place. I think that my grandfather wasn't happy with my gay, leftist, feminist, atheist agenda going on in his house and wanted to teach me a lesson. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little shenanigan story that happened to me. I really am looking forward to the Halloween episode and more spooky fuckery from you guys. I'm sending love to all the hellions and pets, even the 8-legged ones. Okay, I'll let it slip this time.
Just this once.
Roxy Gray.
What a great name.
P.S. I'm not that much of a skeptic anymore.
Yeah. Especially when, like you were saying, when something comes off of a secure... The hanging hook is still secure in the wall. All right, here's the next one. Hello. I have a spooky story, but it's pretty brief. Figured I'd send it anyway. I'm glad you did. I am 41 years old and have gone most of my life without any paranormal phenomena ever happening to or near me. Not for lack of trying. So I've been a little bummed that I've never seen a ghost or anything. I want to believe, That all finally changed maybe 1 or 2 years ago. My boyfriend works 3rd shift and had left to go into work around 10 p.m. I was in bed already, lights off, drifting off to sleep, when he left. A little while later, I could have sworn I saw him walk back into the bedroom as if he'd forgotten something. I think I even asked, "You're back?" It was definitely not him. I saw a dark, shadowy person-shaped form coming toward my bed. So what do? I start kicking my legs under the blankets. Okay, but I need to know, how do you envision the kicking the legs under the blankets? Because is it like a running in place kind of situation?
I imagine it like you start learning how to swim. Which makes it a little bit less scary, but I'm fine with it.
It's such a frantic kicking. This is why I love you so much. That just took a total, I thought it would either be like running in place, like just swishing along under the covers, or like just everybody was kung fu, and just get that one leg like straight up in the air. I don't know which one it was. All right. Sorry. That's my body's need to make light of what is obviously a terrifying situation. Okay, so dark, shadowy, person-shaped form coming toward my bed. So what do? I start kicking my legs under the blanket as if that's going to do anything if the shadow person plans on draining my life force. Then, as quickly as it was there, it was gone again. Was I really just very tired, or was there really something there? I have no idea, and I haven't seen it since. Maybe my karate kicks kept it away?
There you go. It was karate kicks. It wasn't like learning to swim kicks.
Yeah, but were they kicking like along, like staying close to the mattress, or were they getting 3D with it? Were they kicking like straight? And that's what I need to know. That's what I need to know, Janine. She says, feel free to share for the Halloween episode. It's a fun paranormal blip I get to say I experienced now. Girl, if that's a fun little paranormal blip to you, you're tough as hell.
If it didn't happen again, okay. But in the moment, not so fun.
It's so fun. You know what was fun? Is that time the shadow creature I thought was my husband. It's so fucking scary. I can't stand it. Oh, Janine. That was good.
This one is from our Facebook mod Thea, who is also one of Annie's real-life friends.
Oh, she's the best.
And Thea writes, Hi, not spooky, but I've always had very vivid dreams, not really lucid dreams, but very vivid with full-on storylines. When I was taking care of my parents and dealing with their health decline and passings as well as their home, which needed to be sorted and emptied and sold, they'd get more and more convoluted and bizarre. But after some time, they'd be in my dreams being less sick and more themselves, which was comforting. Some of you may be aware of the news that the Harvard Medical School morgue manager was involved in illegally selling bodies that had been donated for scientific research. My parents both were there during the time of this illegal activity. They had always planned for their bodies to be donated to medical students for study and learning. This was upsetting, obviously, but we didn't know any details. A few days after I heard this news, I had a dream and my mom came up and hugged me. And my mom had the best hugs. She could make anything okay with her hugs. I miss them more than anything. When she hugged me in my dream, she felt as solid and strong as ever. It wasn't just a touch. It was a full, solid hug. I woke up feeling like it was her telling me that no matter what happened at Harvard, they were fine. They were whole. I didn't have to worry about them. It gave me and my daughter true comfort. Thea F.
Oh, Thea. That's amazing. I do think that was a real visit. My mom and April used to have dreams like that all the time. And I'm so jealous of you and some of the other listeners that have had dreams like this, because after Adam died, I stopped remembering them. I think it was probably just a defense mechanism against the nightmares about the accident, but I get signs a lot, and I used to get a lot of premonitions even in my dreams, in my sleep, and now I just remember nothing. And I'm so jealous of people who do.
I don't know, we talked about it today already, about the dream stuff, and I know you had a very similar dream. I think like 1 or 2 years ago I dreamt of my dad, and I woke up crying intensely, like it was horrible. I was crying so much. And then a while later, I had a dream that somebody came and said, my dad wants to see me. And in my dream, I said, I don't want to see him anymore because it just makes me too sad. And I never dreamed of my dad afterwards anymore.
Yeah. You can, though, if you decide you want to dream about him again, I bet.
Maybe.
I bet if you talk to your dream self before bed, you can fix that. I think you can. We'll figure out how to do that. All right. This one is from Kitty, who writes, I'm a huge fan of your amazing podcast. Thank you, Kitty. I live in the UK, but I am Irish by background. Well, my accent is wrong on all counts, but here we go. I wanted to share a story for your Spooky Fuckery Halloween episode. Being Irish, I was brought up with lots of tales of the supernatural. As a child, my dad was told he had the gift, as did my paternal grandmother. He continued to experience supernatural experiences all his life. Here is one he shared with me and my sister. In 1964, just after his own father died, when my dad was 9 years old, he woke one night to hear his mother crying and screaming. This took place in Newry, just south of Belfast. He found his mum sat up in bed, white as a sheet and shaking. It was just after 3 a.m. His mum told him she'd been woken by a tapping on the window. This window was on the 3rd floor of the house. Dad sat with her and tried to calm her down. She kept repeating that she'd had a horrible feeling something bad had happened to her brother, who was then living in Australia. She eventually fell asleep, but Dad was so disturbed by the thought of tapping on the window he lay awake all night. Early the next morning, the doorbell rang, and Dad went down to find a postman with an urgent telegram. He took it upstairs, and his mother opened it. It said her brother had died suddenly at 3:15 that morning. Being Irish and taking comfort from communications with the spirit world, his mum simply read it and said, "I already knew he was gone. The tapping was his soul saying goodbye on its way up to heaven." End quote. I have many more of these stories. I even have the telegram itself among my dad's old papers. Thanks again for your podcast, Kitty. Kitty. That's amazing.
Sad, but very comforting as well.
Very, very comforting, I think. It's that confirmation, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, next we have Margaret Rose, and she writes, I hope it's not too late to submit a Halloween tale. I just discovered your podcast and I'm thoroughly enjoying them. Thank you. That was me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
A couple of years ago, during the spring of 2019, my fiancé and I were spending the night at his mother's. I call her Bride of Satan trailer. Okay, you're in the trailer. The trailer is located in a rather remote part of Culpeper County, Virginia, about 65 miles from Washington, D.C. If you're familiar with the Route 29 stalker serial killer cases, Culpeper is ground zero.
Yikes.
To call the trailer creepy would be an understatement. Let's just call it last trailer on the left. Just to give you a visual of the creep factor. Okay, I can picture it.
Yeah.
After visiting with the bride, we prepare for bed in the back bedroom and go to sleep as normal. Around 1 a.m., awakened by the feeling of something on my chest. I try to push it off, and I can't. Now I can't breathe, and I try to scream and get David to wake up. The whatever it is then lifts me up off the bed and starts to strangle me. By now David wakes up and sees what is happening. Then the thing flings me back on the bed, David shakes me, and I guess I wake up and I start screaming. As to what it all was, I have no idea. Most likely, it was an extreme night terror. In any case, it scared the shit off both of us, and I refuse to go back to that creepy-ass trailer ever again. Bride of Satan, by the way, claimed not to have heard a thing. Happy Halloween, and I look forward to hearing more podcasts from you all. Cheers, Margaret Rose. Yeah, I wouldn't go back there as well if something lifts me off the bed and starts strangling me in the middle of the night.
No, I feel like you really do have a legitimate reason to not want to visit your mother-in-law in her charming trailer. And here is our next email from Ilse Denise. I think we were focused on getting the first name correct and might have...
It's a German first name.
Ah, Ilse.
Ilse, yeah.
Ilse. That's really pretty. She writes, Hi, ladies. Okay, I rented a house with 3 roommates in college. We were really excited to land this house because it was perfect for us. A few weeks into living there, my roommates started to experience weird stuff, but no one told each other. One roommate started waking up with scratches on her face. Another started having very disturbing dreams. And the last one started seeing shadows sliding from room to room out of the corner of her eye. I was blissfully unaware and a hardcore, that just happens in movies or people are projecting their fears kind of person. Anyway, after a couple of months, we finally had a conversation. I refused to believe them until I was going to sleep one night, and, while I was still awake, I heard a loud buzzing noise in my ear, and suddenly, I was unable to move. It lasted for about 3 minutes. The louder the buzzing got, the less I was able to breathe. It felt like something was shoving me violently into the bed. It would let up and the buzzing would dim, only to have the buzzing get louder and again be aggressively shoved into the bed. I started praying fervently, and it finally let me go once I was able to say Jesus through paralyzed lips. It was immediate. I sat up and started crying. It was still early, like 10 p.m. or so, and my roommates came into the room and legit celebrated because I finally believed them. Anyway, for the next 6 months, we dealt with a lot of stuff. My room often sounded like it had a crazy person running back and forth in the attic, but you could only hear it in my room. Cross the threshold into the hallway, and you wouldn't hear it, even when someone who was in the room could still hear it. That's when I started sleeping with headphones. Shadow people were always running around. Thank God I never saw one, but friends who would spend the night did. People we literally never told anything to would wake us up crying or tell us in the morning that something was watching them on the ceilings or in the closets. Yeah, I don't like that at all.
No.
Sometimes
I even find it creepy that something from the ceiling is watching you and something from the closet. Like, the closet is to be expected.
Yeah.
But something sitting up on the ceiling watching you is...
That's unexpected.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
And then this part, Johanna. Sometimes they would change shape as you watched them.
Mm-mm.
We ended up giving disclaimers to people. Objects would move around. I once made the bad decision to mock them after they freaked one of us out. I said something like, "Was that the best you can do? Just shut up and let us go to sleep." Oh no.
Don't.
No.
Don't.
In response, they, whatever they were, silently pulled out one of my paintings I had tucked behind a bookcase, and it was thrown across the room. This was not a small painting. We're talking a 3x4 foot painting. That's huge. The worst was a bookcase got flipped over in the middle of the night, but the laptop that was on it was neatly placed on the floor with no damage. Everything else was smashed. There was a lot more.
That's nice of them, though.
It was.
I mean, laptops are expensive.
They are. It's true. It was thoughtful. There was a lot more, but you get the idea. Full-on horror movie. I'm sure all of you are wondering why on God's green earth would a bunch of young women stay in that house. I'm not. I know exactly why. We're like, yeah, no, we get it. Well, we were very spiritual, and we weren't about to let some stupid ghosts make us leave this literal blessing of a house. This house was perfect. It was dirt cheap. Rent was $300 per person in the suburbs of DC. Yeah, We had a university bus at the end of the block. The metro was 5 minutes walk up the hill and down a few steps. And it was surrounded by shops, grocery stores, and there was even a mall across the main road behind the house. Not one of us wanted to leave, so we stayed. We prayed in every inch of the house. That probably just made it matter. Sang songs, and had a standing rule that anyone could wake you up if they were upset or scared due to spooky fuckery. After a while, they stopped. Every once in a while...
Got tired of it.
Yeah. Something relatively small would happen, but by and large, whatever it was in there left us alone. We lived there for 3 years before I got married, and everyone ended up going their own way. Even now, our group of friends love to reminisce about the haunted house their insane friends refused to move out of. It's okay to share my name. Hope it makes it in. I love this so much. It reminds me of where I lived in St. Augustine.
Yeah, I want to say, it's like what's with all your haunted roommate living situations you have in the US?
Yeah,
like,
well, because I think a lot of us, it's the same thing. It's like I liked my roommate, I liked the apartment, I was really close to school. It would be hard to find a different place to live. So you're just like, yeah, it's fine. I could walk to Lil Champ, I could walk to campus. I didn't. I could walk to Village Inn. What else do you need? Nothing.
I love that the thing or the things that were there, these entities, got tired of it. Like, oh, that's not fun.
They're like, ugh, they're not even screaming
scared
anymore. It's no fun.
It's like how you handle trolls. Just ignore.
Yeah, it's why you don't chase the dog when he comes running out with your underwear. Just let him rip them to shreds, and then he'll eventually wear them around like a hat and then lose interest in them. Right?
I loved all of these stories. Thank you. Like every year it was scary and sad and full of hope.
So good. Our listeners have the best stories every year.
Yeah.
Never fails. Never fails. It's the best. Do you have something good this week?
It's gonna become tiresome for some people. I'm sorry, but you know, I'm doing this whole running thing and everything. I'm not gonna talk about the running, but I have to say.
Now you're getting me into it too.
The thing is, I haven't felt this good in my body for, I don't know, I think since my dad passed. Like I'm more, I have energy. I feel stronger again. I feel good.
I'm so happy.
I feel really good.
That makes me so happy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really, and that's my something good.
That's a huge something
I feel really
good. You should feel really good. That's amazing.
How about you?
My something good this week is that Opus, my sweet angel baby, has passed his canine good citizen test, which is...
He's such a good boy. I was so excited when I saw it.
I know. One of them, the one he almost failed, is like, I think it's number 5, where he had to walk through a crowd of people. And technically, he's supposed to really show, like, no interest at all. He showed a lot of interest, but I think the things that would have excluded him was if he, like, jumped on anybody or, like, licked them or something like that. And I think he pauses because he expects that each person he sees is going to fawn all over him. And
so Jim. It's like Jim.
Yeah. And to be fair, like, in his defense, that is the reaction 90% of the time.
Yeah.
He stops traffic when we go. Literally, it's wild. I joke with Paul all the time that really he should have gotten one when he was single 20 years ago. Like, this was the wrong time in his life to get a Great Dane. But that dog is the absolute joy of my life.
Such a good boy.
I'm really, really proud. And I had such a good time with my cousin when she was here and her boyfriend. I have so much to tell you about later. But right now, we just want to thank you so much for listening.
Yes. Thank you for all your stories. Thank you for your messages. Thank you for your ratings and or reviews, which gets me to, if you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, please, 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 that's really important for us. And that's how you can support us. That costs you nothing but a couple of minutes of your time. Go to your favorite podcast app and see if you can leave us a rating and or review. Go to our webpage, freshhellpodcast.com, to see all the links to our merch store, to our Patreon, where you find all kinds of things. Annie mentioned it last week. I kind of cleaned up a little bit, made different collections, and I realized we have a lot of things to offer. They're very, very, as I always call it, very eclectic.
Diverse. Eclectic.
Diverse.
Yes. Eclectic. Eclectic is
group
right.
of things. But there's a lot. A lot of personal stuff also. I hadn't realized how much personal stuff we post on there.
Oh dear. It's probably all me.
No. It's both of us.
Okay.
I post a lot of pictures of my garden.
Oh, your garden
and
is
the
so
renovation.
good. Yeah.
And the dogs. There's a lot of dog photos and this kind of things. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And the new segment that we're trying to do more often is the Tell Me Everything, where we interview people who had
fascinating stories.
Fascinating life stories to tell us.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's also on Patreon. What else? If you want to contact us, please send us an email to freshhellpodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's it. Please tell your pets we said hi, we love them, hug them, kiss them, cuddle them, whatever. Tell all the ghosts and hauntings and entities we said hi, but please don't send them over to us because I really don't want them here. Be kind to your pets. Be kind to your loved ones that send you signs. Acknowledge them. Be kind to your fellow human being. And the most important part of it all, and the hardest one, be kind to yourself.
Yeah, don't talk about my friend that way. And just remember, if you're going through hell,
keep going. Tschüss.
Happy Halloween.